dream, the green dream. Welcome to the green dream, the green dream. Everyday tiny house living with NEC in the green dream.
What's up, Green Dreamers? It's Annie. If you are new to my channel, I have lived in this 200 square foot tiny home, the Green Dream, for the past 5 years. And this channel is about sharing my experiences living in a tiny home and kind of the day in a life, pros and cons of living in small spaces, what I have learned. And today I want to talk about how I decided to live in a tiny home and some considerations that I made in choosing how to go about finding the tiny home that worked for me. So the reasons that I wanted to live in a tiny home are, number one, I wanted to live lighter on the land and more sustainably. And while I'm no saint in this regard, and there are definitely a lot of improvements I could make to my house and to my lifestyle, downsizing, using less electricity, having a composting toilet, not flushing potable water, these were all very appealing prospects for living in a small space. The second reason is that I'm a musician and I wanted a more private place to write and create music. And reason number three is affordability and saving money. So before I considered living in a tiny house, I was also considering some other options. I thought about #van life, which would also have been useful as a touring musician. I thought about RVs, and I ultimately decided to live in a tiny house because it was better insulated, and I'm kind of a wuss as a California girl. So once I decided on living in a tiny home, there were some other considerations to make. Did I want to build my own home? Did I want to find a used home? Or did I want to work with some builders to create my house? I decided on option three, and I worked with a great family-owned company called Tiny Mountain Houses that I will link. And when I was considering option one, building my own house, I did a bit of research. I talked to some people who had built their own homes. I actually saw a movie at the time about someone who was building their own house. And a lot of the people who didn't have building experience, which I do not, it took them a pretty long time to build their house. It ended up costing a good bit of money to work with people who knew what they were doing. And it didn't feel like something I wanted to take on. Option number two, finding a used house. I did actually look at some used tiny houses, and I found that they actually were not much cheaper than working with the builders I ended up working with. And I also was a little bit skittish about the uncertainty about how the house was put together. But those two options can be really great options for people. And there's a lot of people on YouTube who've built their own homes, and it's really inspiring. But that was not my path, not the path that I chose to take. So I have some other videos where I will talk in more detail about the specs of the house, give you a tour of the different areas. The house is 8.5 feet wide, 24 feet long. The footprint is just under 200 square feet, and I have 2 lofts, a sleeping loft and a storage loft. I am connected to the main house for electricity and water. I do hope at some point to have solar panels, and if anyone wants to sponsor that, I would definitely welcome that. At some point, I would love to join a community and just do more to recycle gray water and really try to make this space as off-grid as possible. I'm currently in a more urban environment, which is really great for my work, but I do have an option with this house to be basically off-grid. I would have to get water from some source, but I wanted something that would be flexible in that way. I will go into more detail in some other videos about pros and cons of tiny house living, but overall, I feel really satisfied. I feel really happy that I'm not flushing potable water and I have my composting toilet. I'm really happy that my footprint is a bit lighter and that I have other options to continue to make it lighter. I love having a private space to create, and I'll definitely share my music with you and maybe do a little session, a little tiny house session. That's a huge blessing and a huge freedom that I have. It is a pretty affordable option. It's allowing me to live in an urban space for a lot less than I would otherwise pay. So I'm really grateful for that. One of my visions is to help create some different living options for people and some more affordable living options for people, because I think that the path we're going down is really unsustainable in so many ways, and it's definitely unsustainable in a financial sense as well. And so that's part of my vision. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more, please subscribe. Please let me know in the comments if there's anything you want me to talk about. I'm going to do a frequently asked questions video about living in a tiny house. But just comment any questions you have, stay in touch, check out my music channel. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope this was helpful for you.